Yeah, we aren't see your screen.
You do not see my screen?
I don't see your screen.
Can anyone else help me and tell me whether you can see my screen?
We can't. We cannot see the screen. We just see like a black screen. And now I can see
Oh,
your
that
video.
is okay. I will try again. Let's hope it's not the internet connection. When can you see it now?
Now we can.
Okay.
Yes, thank you so much.
Thank you for letting me know. Well, I do think we can start um, with our webinar. Well, I welcome you all. As I said before, thank you very much for joining us. We have very different time zones here, and I'm really happy about your enthusiasm of joining for Asian participants at a very late time. My name is Nadja Deger. I work at GIZ, that's a German Development Cooperation Agency. I work in a project on vehicle efficiency, and together with UNEP, we with the UN Environment Program, we are putting together this webinar series on vehicle efficiency. We started last week with a webinar on mostly focused on vehicle efficiency of light duty vehicles, and today we want to talk about how to promote energy efficiency of two and three wheelers through effective policy making. And we have lots of great speakers for you today. But before we dive into the agenda, I'm showing you here that we have a third webinar on vehicle efficiency of heavy duty vehicles. And well, we are here. I think we all know that the transportation sector is a major contributor to global greenhouse gas emissions. It makes up about 23% of world CO2 emissions. And of course, within this sector, two and three wheelers are growing rapidly and play an important role. They produce a lot of emissions, and like especially in cities in developing countries like Ouagadougou or Bamako, these types of vehicles account for more than half of CO2 emissions and almost three quarters of harmful air pollutants. So we really want to talk about what we can do about this, and of course. We will take a look at the Asian perspective because we know that in Asia there are about 270 a million motorcycles today, and that's a number that is expected to exceed 400 million, sorry, vehicles by 2050. So looking at these types of vehicles is definitely important as they are so essential for personal transport in cities that are crowded, but also economic activities like whatever deliveries or ride sharing. Um, and we are taking a look at vehicle efficiency because we know that this is crucial to fight climate change and air pollution. Of course, there are lots of measures focusing on avoiding motorized trips or of moving people from or shifting people from using their own four-wheeled car to maybe public transportation. Um, but moving also from vehicles that use internal combustion engines to electrified vehicles is an important pillar of this fight against climate change and reducing this role that transport plays. Um, and that's why many governments and organizations are working to promote energy efficiency and the use of electric two and three wheelers. As I said in the beginning, I personally work on a project that is called Improve by GIZ that works on these kinds of measures. But also the United Nations Environment Program supports national programs for electrifying two and three wheelers in Africa, Asia, and Latin America, with the goal of reducing greenhouse gas emissions and improving air quality. They're focusing on setting global and regional goals for electrifying two and three wheelers. UNEP provides policy advice, just as GIZ actually, and tries to promote international standards for two and three wheelers. They develop different knowledge products and guides. We will show you at the end further resources where you can delve deeper into the topic. And well, we, UNEP and GIZ and many other organizations, we try to bring you together and have exchanges so that we can learn from each other. And that we can also learn on what governments can do, how they can, by developing policies that regulate, for example, the vehicles that come into the country, but also the rolling fleet, and what they can do to improve the very often very inefficient 2- and 3-wheelers that we have on our roads. So let's take a look at who we have here with us today. So to talk to us about their experiences, their work on the ground. I'm showing you here the agenda of today's session. We will start with a presentation by Dr. Wong on fuel consumption standard development. She's from ICCT. I'll go into the details right now, but this is like a little overview. We follow this with the presentation from the Philippines on promoting energy efficiency in the Philippines by Dr. Biona. We'll then have a Q&A session where you have the possibility to ask your questions to our speakers and have your doubts resolved. And then we follow this by 2 more presentations by Mr. Sila Sanga and Dr. Tibakira. Mr. Sila is from Kenya and Dr. Tibakira, I'm sorry, from Colombia. I'm being advised that you can't hear me well. Is that still the case?
Yeah, we hear you with a lot of like breaking up your voice. I'm not sure if it's maybe your connection.
Yeah, it seems to be my connection. I'm very sorry. I'm in the office. I will give me 1 second.
Maybe if you close your camera, it's gonna be better.
Maybe you can hear me better now. I tried switching.
Yes.
Internet. Yes.
Now it's better.
Okay. I'm very sorry for this little hiccup. But as I was saying, so we have 2 presentations that will be followed by a little Q&A session, and then another 2 presentations with another chance for you to ask your questions and resolve your doubts. And then we dive into the final remarks. And as I said before, we will share some resources that help you, read more about the topic. We will start with a presentation by Dr. Wong. She's a researcher that works for the International Council on Clean Transportation and will tell us about the development of fuel consumption standards for 2- and 3-wheelers. Obviously, ICCT is an expert organization on the topic, and Dr. Wong herself focuses her work on vehicle technologies and policies for reducing the carbon print of light-duty vehicles in Vietnam. Her presentation, she will focus on Vietnam and the 2- and 3-wheelers market, and will give us an overview of what ICCT proposes for fuel consumption standards in the region. So I will hand over to you, Dr. Wong, and let you share your screen.
Yeah, thank you, Nadia. Let me share my screen. Wait a moment. Can you see my screen?
Yes, we can.
Yes.
So, good morning, good evening, everyone. So, my name is Hương Lê, researcher from International Council on Clean Transport, ICCT. So before I start my presentation, I would like to give you a short introduction about ICCT. So ICCT is an independent non-profit research organization that founded in 2005 to provide exceptional, objective, and timely research and technical technical and scientific analysis to environmental regulators. So our work empowers policymakers and others worldwide to improve the environmental performance of road, marine, air transportation to benefit public health and mitigate climate change. So it is my pleasure to present to you the result of our work on developing fuel consumption for two-wheelers in Vietnam today. As you know, that the two-wheelers, including motorcycles and moped, are the dominant transport mode in Vietnam, which is play an important role in meeting the travel demand of Vietnamese people. More than 80% of the travel demand are carried out by two-wheeler every day in Vietnam. So two-wheeler are also provide the main transport mode for people, but it also leading cause of many environmental problems in the country, especially air and noise pollution. And motorcycle is responsible for the greatest level of traffic emission among the transport modes because of their dominant in the vehicle fleet, low emission standards, and lack of regulation regarding vehicle inspection and maintenance. So to developing or adopting fuel consumption standard for two-wheeler in Vietnam is an effective or a promising approach to reduce the negative of two-wheeler and in the air pollution and environment. So my presentation have two parts. So first, I will present to you about the fuel consumption baseline result that we developed for we developed for two-wheeler in Vietnam. So as you can see that in terms of new sales of Vietnamese two-wheeler market ranked second in the ASEAN region after Indonesia and fourth in the world behind China, India, and Indonesia. So every year, almost around 2.5 to 3 millions of new motorcycles are sold in Vietnam. So we selected 2021 as baseline year for developing fuel consumption standards. And in 2021, nearly 100 companies offered two-wheelers in the Vietnam markets, with around 2.3 million two-wheelers were sold in the year. In our analysis, we focus on the top selling companies only, and this is covering 28 companies, which is account for 96.5% of 2021 two-wheeler fleet. So as you can see that the two-wheeler market in Vietnam were dominated by Japanese brands, including Honda and Yamaha, with the market share of 65.6% from Honda in 2021, and following by Yamaha with 12.5% of the market share. The remaining 26 companies account for the smaller market share with only around 22%. In which nearly 10% are electric two-wheelers. And this showing the key characteristic of two-wheeler in Vietnam. The majority of two-wheeler in 2021 were internal combustion motorcycles that accounting for nearly more than 70%, in which 83% are motorcycles. Motorcycles definition based on Vietnamese regulation is the vehicle, two-wheeler vehicle with engine size larger than 50 cc, and 76% are mopeds, which is vehicle with engine size smaller than 50 cc. And in the right-hand side, you can see it's the electric two-wheeler market share by manufacturers in Vietnam. As I already mentioned, there in 2021, almost 10% of the market share were electric two-wheeler, including e-mopeds and this vehicle with engine power smaller than 4 kilowatt and e-motorcycle. This is mean that in 2021, around 300,000 electric two-wheeler were sold in the year. And unlike internal combustion two-wheelers, which are dominated by Japanese brands, Honda and Yamaha, the electric two-wheelers market in Vietnam are dominated by domestic brands. The total sale of domestic brands is around 60%, in which VinFast, a Vietnamese company offering both electric two-wheeler and electric car, is the biggest player with the 32.8% of the electric two-wheelers sold in the year were from VinFast, following by Pega, also a Vietnamese brand with like 29.3% of the market share. So for developing the fuel consumption standards, we analyzed the fuel consumption of the two-wheeler fleet in 2021. We estimate the fleet average fuel consumption that include electric two-wheelers and exclude electric two-wheeler. So in 2021, the fleet average fuel consumption that includes EVs is about 1.72 liter per 100 kilometer, while the fleet with average fuel consumption that without EVs is higher at 1.89 liter per 100 kilometer. So we can see that the EVs help to reduce the fleet average fuel consumption of two-wheeler fleet in Vietnam around 9%. And in terms of the vehicle type, the average fuel consumption of internal combustion moped is 1.44 liter per 100 kilometer, which is like around 35% lower than average fuel consumption of internal combustion motorcycles. And this is the fleet average fuel consumption by company. So you can see that the fleet fuel consumption vary across the company, ranging from 1.2 liter per 100 kilometer to 2.7 liter per 100 kilometer. And you can see that Piaggio, ZPH Vietnam, and Suzuki are three companies that have the highest average fuel consumption, which is significantly higher than the average fleet fuel consumption. And the Sumoto, Lifan, and Saki Vietnam are three companies that have lowest average fuel consumption, with the average fleet fuel consumption around 1.3, 1.2 liter per 100 kilometer, respectively. The reason why these three companies have lowest fuel consumption average fuel consumption value are that they are only offering internal combustion mopeds in Vietnam, which is have lower engine displacement, lower weight compared to internal combustion motorcycle. And after analyzing the baseline fuel consumption of two-wheeler, we developing the fuel consumption standard for this vehicle type in Vietnam. So before going to our proposed standards for Vietnam, I just want to remind that what about the vehicle fuel economy standards. And I want to highlight that these are national regulations that apply to new vehicles only, not to the vehicles that already operate on the road. And countries set different legal basic for these standards. In Vietnam, we based on the UN Agreement on Climate Change, National Determined Contribution. The compliant target can be set as per vehicle minimum efficiency performance standards, or we can call it MAPS. And as a corporate average fuel economy or fuel consumption or CO2 emission, we call it CAFE. So we either can regulate fuel economy or fuel consumption or CO2 emission. These three metrics are similar. It's a similar numerical expression of the same concept, and they are equivalent. The regulated entities are the companies or manufacturers that producing, assembling, and importing new vehicles for sale in the national market. And each type of compliant option, MAPS and CAFE, they have different characteristics, different pros and cons. I will not go detail about it. So for the Vietnam, we to develop fuel consumption standard for two-wheeler in Vietnam. So we estimate the benefits of CO2 reduction and effect of two-wheeler sale when using MAPS and CAFE for regulating fuel consumption standards. And then we compare the disadvantages of MAPS and CAFE, and we see that MAPS is easier to implement, but the benefit in terms of CO2 reductions is very small compared to CAFE. And if we are using MAPS for regulating fuel consumption standards, that will strongly affect the sale of several individual companies in Vietnam, because the MAPS they have the same fuel consumption value apply for each vehicle models. That is not provide the flexibility for the manufacturers. And the CAFE approach that will provide the higher result in CO2 reduction and provides a fair across manufacturers. Manufacturers can continue to sell any type motorcycle models that they want as long as the average sale are meeting the targets. So after comparing advantages, disadvantages of two approach, we recommend that CAFE methods should be used to develop fuel consumption standard for two-wheeler in Vietnam. And we also compare the CO2 reduction benefits and level of challenges to meet the fuel consumption target among manufacturers. When using three different vehicle parameters, including engine size or engine displacement, vehicle weight, and engine power, due to limit time, so I will not present detail on our calculation. If you have any question on how to select the physical parameter for regulating fuel consumption standards for two-wheelers, please contact me later by email. I provide my email at the end of the presentation and I will get back to you. So in this presentation, I will provide you the key findings of our calculation. Based on our analysis, we recommend to use engine displacement as a design parameter for potential adoption of corporate average fuel consumption standard in Vietnam because of the four main reasons. The first is using CAFE when provide the most balanced complaint challenge among all manufacturers, and using engine displacement for regulating fuel consumption standard when provide the largest benefit in terms of CO2 reduction and fuel consumption reduction. And using the parameter also could be linked to other regulation in Vietnam that already exist. For example, road safety taxes that we regulated also based on engine size. And the last one is to using the engine displacement for regulating fuel consumption standard when promote the electric two-wheeler sale in Vietnam. So we propose the fleet average fuel consumption targets for Vietnam is 1.38 liter per 100 kilometer, which is 20% lower compared to fuel consumption standard average in baseline year, which is 1.72 liter per 100 kilometer. The proposed implementing time is from 2026 to 2031, which means that the annual fuel consumption reduction is around 4.4%. And based on the international experiences, the target is reasonable and reachable. So this table is present our proposal on sale-weighted average fuel consumption limits for different engine segments. Based on the proposed standard fuel consumption for mopeds, that is vehicle with engine displacement smaller than 50 cc, is unchanged at 1.4 liter per 100 kilometer. This is when reduce the impact on the smaller domestic companies because the majority of these companies are producing and selling mopeds, and also avoids the impact on the lowest price vehicle segment that low-income people can afford. And these proposed targets can be made more stringent in the second phase of fuel consumption standard development in Vietnam. The step function are designed to closely match with linear function adjusted and divided in the previous step to reduce average fuel consumption by 20% compared to the baseline in 2021, and the step values above 300 cc were adopted from China's standard experience. And these values are just to meet the fuel consumption target for Vietnam. The reason why we use it reference from China for vehicle above 300 cc because this type of vehicle is not common or popular in Vietnamese market. And we also estimating the CO2 and fuel consumption reduction benefit when implementing adopting fuel consumption standard for two-wheeler in Vietnam. So these two figures show the benefit of CO2 emission and fuel consumption reduction when adopting fuel consumption standard under the business as usual scenario. So when no fuel consumption standard are adopted, the annual fuel consumption in Vietnam two-wheeler fleet is in 2050 is around 70% higher than that in 2021, and from 2.6 billion liter fuel consumption in 2021 to 4.4 billion liter in 2050. So in terms of the national fuel consumption, the adoption of fuel consumption standard would contribute to reducing the fleet annual demand for gasoline by 0.6 billion liter per year by 2050. And this is a summary and recommendation of my presentation. As if the average fuel consumption in Vietnam is 1.72 liter per 100 kilometers without including electric two-wheeler, and the fleet average fuel consumption with including electric two-wheeler is higher. It means that the electric two-wheeler penetration will help to reduce the fuel consumption, fleet fuel consumption average in Vietnam. And we recommend CAFE and should be used for developing fuel consumption standard for two-wheeler in Vietnam, and using the physical parameter for regulating standards is the engine displacement. And by implementation, the fuel consumption standard will reduce annual fuel consumption from 4.4 billion liter by 2050 to 3.8 billion liter, with like 13.8% of reduction compared to business as usual. This brings me to the end of my presentation. Thank you very much. I'm sorry that I take longer time to present. Yeah.
Not a problem at all. Thank you very, very much, Dr. Wong. That was a very, very interesting presentation, and I encourage everybody to think about the questions that you would like to ask to Dr. Wong while we listen to the next presentation. As I told you before, we will have second presentation and then go into the Q&A session. So please use the time to ask your questions in the chat, or you will also have the chance to raise your virtual hand at the end and speak up and unmute your microphone. But before, we will hear a presentation by Mr. Silas Sanga from Kenya. Let me share my screen for 1 second. Mr. Sanga works at EPRA, at the Energy and Petroleum Regulating Authority in Kenya, and he has experience in topics of fuel and vehicle efficiency. He has worked at the Global Fuel Economy Initiative before, for example, and is now in charge of energy efficiency policies in Kenya, and will tell us a little bit about what Kenya is doing to regulate energy efficiency of 2030 and also showing us some interesting findings that they have had in various studies. So I would like to give the floor to you, Mr. Sanga, and invite you to share your screen.
Okay, thank you very much. I hope I'm audible.
Yes, we can hear you very, very well.
Okay, thank you. Good morning, good evening, good afternoon, everyone. My name is Silas Sanga, Energy and Petroleum Regulatory Authority. It's a pleasure to be here today. I don't know whether my screen is visible.
For me, it's yes. Now we can see. We do see the PowerPoint software. We do not see it in presentation mode yet.
Okay.
Now
okay
it is.
now?
Yes, it's perfect. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. It's a pleasure to be here today to present to you the status of energy efficiency in Kenya in regards to e-mobility. This follows a very intensive research over the years, possibly 10 years, in regards to finding out the trends on how to enhance energy efficiency, particularly in Kenya. This, of course, was done with the background that our country was grappling with registration of ICE engines, which were polluting our environment, and the registrations were really going up every single day. So I'm going to do a presentation on that, and then from there we'll look at the energy efficiency policies that as a country we have proposed going forward. So just as a background, as a country, we are in line with the global context with regards to the Paris Agreement, which requires that 22% of global vehicles could be electric by 2025 and 35 by 2030. But as a country, we have a target of having 5% of all registrations of electric vehicles to be electric by 2025. That is the National Energy Efficiency and Conservation Strategy. Again, in the context of our country, that is the status of the current registration that we have in regards to motor vehicles. For electric, we are doing around 4,193 number of registered motor vehicles. That includes 2- and 3-wheelers. Of course, we've had challenges of the data cleaning, which at the moment we are segregating whether it's fully the 4-wheelers, the 2- and 3-wheelers. But a huge number of the vehicles which are being registered currently are petrol, which stands at almost 85%. For electric, we are doing around 1.6%, which again we have a target to do 5% in the coming year. The ideal scenario of registration of motorcycles, we project an annual registration of almost close to 550,000 by the year 2030. That is the trend of the registration that we've been having as a country, and that tells you the registration status could really impact on the issues of energy efficiency and fuel consumption that we have as a country. Again, just looking at how we are doing in regards to electricity consumption, because we noticed that electricity is one of the key players to enhance or to reduce the use of petrol and other fossil fuels. And therefore, the country, we are doing 92% of renewable energy, which we are seeing it as a potential for us to be able to increase the uptake of using electric motor vehicles and 2- and 3-wheelers. Again, that is just the generation mix that we have as a country. And at the moment, our target is to do possibly close to 96% of renewable energy by 2035. That therefore means that we'll be doing away with fossil fuel power, the thermal plants and all that. So as a country, we stride ourselves in the fact that we should be fully renewable energy so that at least it can support the uptake of electric mobility, then enhancing energy efficiency. Again, that is just the load demand as October 2024. It tells you between 10 and 6 in the morning, we are able to use electricity, because that is a point whereby we have the use of electricity at that point is not much. And that is why, as a country, we had to develop a specialized tariff for electric vehicles. That starts from 10 to 6 in the morning. Therefore, it actually cuts it by half. We are paying 16 shillings during the peak and 8 shillings during off-peak. So that is seen as one of the major changes or major issue that is going to increase the uptake. And then maybe just to jump on that, that is just on projected e-vehicle consumption. What happened for EVs that as of last year, 2023, the power generation or the power that was being uptaken by EV was around 29,000 kilowatts. But as of June this year, that had hit almost 292,000 kilowatt hours. So between last year and this year, we see a jump in the use of electricity which has been taken, especially for uptake by EVs. That is just a cost-benefit analysis on cost savings on EVs, and this is linked directly to energy efficiency, because looking at the savings that you'll be able to save if we use EV vis-a-vis ICE engines. For an e-bus, you would save close to $55 per day. For an e-boarder, that is the 2-wheelers, you will save close to that is 1,413 Kenya shillings, translating to around $10. And then for e-boarder, that will be around $5 per day. So those are the savings that we did, just to project how much savings you'll be able to make if you'll be able to use an EV as opposed to an ICE engine. So the energy efficiency initiatives that has really helped us to transform to this is that we have some regulations which is mandatory for you to do energy audits. Again, we have recommendations which you must meet at least 50% of the projected savings And many companies are, of course, doing energy audits on their facilities, and we are happy to note that even for motor vehicle dealers and motor vehicle manufacturers, they're also coming to undertake this. The Standards and Labeling Program, which was rolled out in 2016, this has been increased to include the labeling of motor vehicles, which will be imported into the country. This is as per the regulations that we developed in 2019. Initially, we were just doing the labeling for appliances, but now we are doing it. The fact that the regulations will be passed, then we need to do this for all the motor vehicles and even the 2- and 3-wheelers that are coming into the country. On the other initiatives that we have, especially on the future of energy efficiency, we have the aspect of quality energy auditing, measurement, and verifications. This means that as a country, we are looking forward to having some laboratories for even testing the energy efficiency for any units that come into the country. And then a lot of education, even in our curriculum in schools, and then sectors that are currently in government, which do not cover energy efficiency programs. That is now going to be a requirement that happens. We also have regulations for labeling of appliances, devices, and motor vehicles. For motor vehicles, this includes 2- and 3-wheelers. It also includes the 4-wheelers, and it will be mandatory that all vehicles coming into the country must have energy efficiency stickers. Those stickers ideally would assist even for consumer choice. And again, it will trigger the manufacturers in terms of manufacturing a certain number of vehicles which come into the country, which are preferred by the consumers. Those are just examples of the energy efficiency stickers that we had proposed in a previous study, which was funded by UNEP. The one on the left, that would be for the appliances, but the one on the right would be ideally for a motor vehicle sticker that we would propose. So that means it will be able to show you the engine type and fuel type, the make and model of the vehicle, and the fuel consumption per 100 kilometers. That is the liters per 100 kilometers, and then the CO2 emissions in grams per kilometer. This would ideally make choices for consumers so that they're able to make informed choices when they're purchasing the motor vehicles. That's just another one. The star would indicate the rating. More stars, more savings means if you buy a 2- and 3-wheeler which has 5 stars, then that means it's more fuel efficient as compared to 1 star. It will indicate the logo information on implementation, the licensing status, the fuel consumption in liters per 100 kilometers, the emission, the model, the fuel type, and of course it will have the licensing requirements because this would have to be a licensable aspect. So just coming to the future of energy efficiency in Kenya, we have identified 5 main areas. One will be in regards to inspection. We noticed that inspection is one of the key areas of opportunities that we need to undertake as a country, because most of the vehicles that come into the country, ideally we needed to ensure that we do regular inspections. That is a mandatory inspection to ensure that they are still meeting the requirements of the imports that were done. We have the issues of restricting high polluting units into the country, which again is proposed. Now, for the tax rebate system or reward scheme for vehicle charging fee, this is an aspect again which is being considered across all government agencies, so that we have some taxes which would reward high efficient vehicles, and for those polluting units, then they'll be able to pay a higher tax if you're going to import a unit for the same. In terms of infrastructure, the transport policy and the aspect of health surveillance. Now, for the health surveillance, we are looking at undertaking a status of just to see how the concentrations of total suspended particulate matter. That would ideally inform whether these vehicles need to undertake a lot of tests and inspections across the country. Public awareness forums, an informed public for sure would be able to know which is a most efficient 2- and 3-wheeler, so to say. And then, of course, the vehicle standards, which would include reducing the use of private vehicles and adopting a mass rapid transit systems. So that is just as a way forward, which we have identified as a country. The aspect of constant sensitization, the issues of the building code to incorporate charging stations in the buildings, the National Green Code to incorporate EV charging. This has already been done. And then the disposal policy, even if we are going to adopt an EV vehicle, that would require that we meet some certain requirements as per the disposal aspects. Then the data hub for mapping and charging of stations, and then incentives to promote clean finance. Some of the incentives that we've seen, which has really picked up, include the zero rating of some certain aspects. For instance, the excise duty on imported motor vehicles. So this would only be enjoyed by the 2 and 3 electric wheelers as opposed to ICE engine vehicles. So this has seen as a way, one of the ways of promoting energy efficiency as a country. So I think with that, I've come to the end of my presentation. Thank you very much. I'm looking forward to interactive session. Thank you.
Thank you very, very much, Mr. Sanga, and also Dr. Hong Lee. Thank you so much for your presentations. We already have received some questions in the chat. I would like to maybe to start off with questions to Dr. Wang Li. Many people are interested about electrification of 2 and 3 wheelers and want to know, for example, Juan Camilo Giraldo is asking what the current situation in Vietnam is in terms of infrastructure, charging infrastructure, not only in the urban areas but also in rural areas. Maybe you can tell us a little bit about that. And then we also have a question by Ankit Tabar, who wants to know if there actually is a need for public charging infrastructures, or if people in Vietnam have access to their own private charging infrastructure. Can you tell us a little bit about that?
Thank you, Nadia, and thank you, audience, for your very interesting question. So I got talking about the infrastructure, charging infrastructure in Vietnam. So as you know, VinFast is a Vietnamese brand, produce e-motorcycle, also e-car, and also e-bus. They are also main player in providing charging infrastructure in Vietnam, and they provide the charging infrastructure across the country, not only in the big city like Hanoi and Ho Chi Minh City, but also the other provinces in the country. And they provide the charging infrastructure at the shopping mall, at the gas station, also at office building, residential building. So and the other private company also start entering to Vietnam market to provide the charging infrastructure for EVs in Vietnam. But compared to VinFast, their charging infrastructure is still very limited. And also the public charging infrastructure in Vietnam also limited. The problem of the charging infrastructure in Vietnam, for example, VinFast is the largest player in the market, but they are only allowed Vin motorcycle to charge a vehicle at the charging station. So I think this is a big problem in Vietnam. And to address this problem, our ICCT, we're also working on developing the policy to promote the EV adoption in Vietnam. And we have provided the recommendation for the government is to develop comprehensive and charging infrastructure standards for the providers. So everyone provide the same charging infrastructure, the same features, so that allow the different vehicle from different manufacturer can charge their vehicle at the charging station. And as I already mentioned, VinFast not only providing charging infrastructure at the big city, they also providing in the other province. I hope I answer the first question. And in the second question, so the very good question. So in Vietnam, the daily average travel distance of the motorcyclist is 17 kilometers per day. It's based on the survey conducted by MOT, Ministry of Transport in Vietnam. So for the private use purpose, I do think that there are full charge vehicle can travel for few days without need to recharge again. But for the commercial purpose like Grab or Uber, maybe they need to charge their vehicle more often, and providing battery swapping for electric two-wheelers would be a potential approach to address the problem with the commercial purpose. And I come with the second question from Annie.
I already asked you. I asked you that the question was whether people have access to their own private charging infrastructure at their homes.
Yeah, so actually in Vietnam, the e-moped is the vehicle with lower engine power, less than 4 kilowatt. It's quite common in rural area of Vietnam, because to operate this vehicle, people don't need the driving license. So, and many high school students and elderly people use it e-moped in rural area for their daily commuting, and they can easily to charge their vehicle at home. So I do think that we also need the public charging in Vietnam, but maybe focusing on the big cities, because in big cities there are many high-rise buildings, and not many people have can charge their vehicle at home. So public charging is needed, and also providing public charging at the highway or expressways. It's also important so people can access their charging infrastructure with a long travel distance. That my opinion regarding the second question from Annick. Yeah.
Thank you very, very much for those comprehensive answers. I'd like to give the word to Mr. Tibakira, who has raised his hand.
Thank you, Nadia. I would like to ask to Dr. Kuhn about the barriers that they had when they were adopting all the standards for the fuel economy in the motorcycle. They had barriers from the manufacturers, where the manufacturers not really supporting this kind of standards. Something like that happened in your country, because we have that here in Colombia.
So thank you for your question. Yeah, it's very good question. I think it happened the same in Vietnam. So we also, when we present our work together with Vietnam Register, it's our national partner for the project, and we also present the result of our work with like Vietnamese Association of Motorcycle Manufacturers. So they also have a lot of question, and to be honest, they don't want to implement the fuel consumption standards because they have to invest more in the production costs in adopting the more advanced technology to meet the fuel consumption standards. But we also found out that if they start producing and selling electric two-wheeler in Vietnam, it will be easier for them to meet the fuel consumption target.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks a lot. And I give the floor to Ankit Hebar from India.
Thank you. I just had one question, and this might be a little roundabout, but the problem I see in adoption of electric two-wheelers, and consequently, the CAFE norms being met, is that if public charging is preferred for electric two-wheelers, then there might not be a demand met by the charge point operators, because electric two-wheelers consume very few kilowatt hours of electricity, whereas you could make a larger profit by selling more energy to vehicles like cars. So would this be a hurdle going on in the future as adoption increases and as more people require public charging, but public charging will probably favor selling more electricity to cars instead of to two-wheelers, considering all the capex costs? Would it be a hindrance?
Very good point. I think somehow you are right. But I do think that in the future, motorcycles still play an important role in finding the travel demand for Vietnamese people. So to offering the public charging infrastructure for two-wheelers, especially in the large city, where the pollution level is very high, and government should promote a cleaner vehicle. And compared to car, motorcycles consume less space, consume less energy requirements. So I do think that motorcycle is still important, and providing the for motorcycle in Vietnam, especially in the big cities, is still important, and they should provide it.
So it has to come with policy support, you mean, for to ensure their charging stations are available, for motorcycles as well. That would require a policy push.
Yes, it needs.
Yeah. Thank you.
Thanks a lot. Thanks a lot to Dr. Wong Lee for answering all these questions. We do have a question in the chat by Vandana Nair for Mr. Sangha. The question is, what is your opinion about having energy efficiency labeling for electric vehicles, also especially for heavy-duty electric vehicles? Mr. Sangha, can you answer?
Thank you for the question. Well, for one of the issues which we're also grappling with was the issues of enforcement aspects, because the energy labeling or the performance labeling program, ideally sometimes you find the certification from the manufacturer would be different from the real world scenario. But one of the issues which we are considering, and maybe which will be forced or which will be part of the regulations, will be to ensure there's constant surveillance and enforcement on particular motor vehicles which come into the country. So once the performance labeling standards are in place, then it will be easier for, let's say, the customs and other government agencies to ensure that whatever is on the certificate of origin ideally would be the ones which will be tested. And that is why one of the suggestions which is being proposed in the regulations is to ensure that we have performance labeling and standards laboratories, which will be ideally, we will be sampling process to ensure that any vehicle that comes into the country will be subjected to tests before they're allowed into the country. The other aspect was on the insurance, whereby every single year that you renew your insurance for the motor vehicle, it could be an opportunity to ensure that they have test certificate before any insurance is issued to the subject motor vehicle. So that will show that at the end of the day, you have to go for those inspections. Then the test certificate that will be issued ideally will be used as part of the evidence to show that your vehicle has undergone particular tests, and these are the standards which should be as per the certificate that was given during the point of delivery. So I think those will be the two suggestions that we think will work for us. Yeah, thank you.
Thanks a lot, Mr. Sangha. I'll follow up right with the next question by Katharina Eichinger, who wants to know what the position is, or maybe the role of the private sector of enterprises when it comes to promoting energy efficiency and standards. Can you maybe tell us a little bit about that?
Okay. Yeah, thank you. Private sector plays a very important role in promoting energy efficiency in Kenya, and one of the key aspects which they have played, even as we developed the regulations and the standards, was that for us to develop regulations, there has to be a private sector representative who will give the input. For private sector, we consider the vehicle manufacturers, the importers, and even the assembly plants that we have in the country. And therefore, their role will ideally be during the policy development of the regulations. And they will also come in to support some of the programs that includes creating awareness and also ensuring that the standards that we are having as a country meet the international standards that we adopt as a country. Recently, the private sector again participated in development of the East African community standards. Currently, we're integrating them to ensure that across East Africa, we have unified standards that promote energy efficiency in the country. And therefore, those would be the roles the private sector would play for now. Thank you.
I find that very interesting. Can you tell us a little bit more about these East African standards? They are on energy efficiency, but do they touch on the transport sector as well? And what do they contain?
Yeah, the East Africa standards that we have harmonized currently includes the fuel. For instance, we have the East Africa standards for diesel, for petrol, and for any fuels that come into the country. And we are in the process of harmonizing all the standards that we're using so that if any country is coming to, let's say, Uganda or Kenya or Tanzania, then we look forward to ensuring that we meet the standards that we have developed. So we have a regional committee that is working on the standards to ensure that we harmonize them. But I would say for now, on issues of energy efficiency, it is in progress towards finalization to ensure that the standards are integrated and we meet the minimum requirements that we have set. So we have benchmarked with a number of countries across the globe just to have the right fit for purpose standards for East African community. Thank you.
Great, thank you. Thank you very, very much, Mr. Sanga. Thank you very much, Dr. Wong Lee. With that, I think we can move on to the second part of our webinar, as I see that there are no more questions at the moment in the chat. Feel free to continue posting your questions to all of our speakers. My question right now would be if Mr. or Dr. José Bienvenido Manuel Biona is with us. Or if he maybe struggles to enter our call. Mr. Biona, if you are here, I do not see you among the participants, but of course I still want to give you the chance to present. It doesn't seem to be the case. If Mr. Biona enters the call later, then of course we are happy to give him the floor, but then instead, we will move on to Juan Esteban Tibaquira, who is a researcher at the University of Pereira. He focuses on energy efficiency and transport issues, and will tell us about the energy efficiency program for 2- and 3-wheelers in Colombia. He will give us an overview of the 2- and 3-wheeler market and developments in the country, and the proposal of the study that developed the energy efficiency roadmap for motorcycles in Colombia. So I'm very happy to give the floor to you, Dr. Juan Esteban Tibaquira.
Thank you, Nadia, for the presentation. I'm going to share my screen. Let me know when you can see it. Let me know if you are seeing my presentation right now.
Yes, we do see it. Perfect.
All right. Thank you very much. Okay, I would like to show you the proposal that we are developing for an energy efficiency program for new motorcycles in Colombia. This is a project that we are developing, a consortium of universities, Technological University of Pereira, EAFIT University, University of Antioquia, and the Technological Institute of Monterrey. We are supported also by the Environment Program of United Nations, and the project is funded by the Ministry of Energy in Colombia. To start with this general context, I would like to say that Colombia has a population of about 52 million people, and since 2000, 11.7 million new motorcycles have been registered in the system in Colombia. So we had a big number of motorcycles right now in our country. It's about 225 motorcycles per 1,000 inhabitants is the number that we have right now. About that, the government is kind of worried about the fuel consumption, about the CO2 emission of all these motorcycles. So the ministry has hired a consortium of universities to develop an energy efficiency program for the motorcycle sector. So as I already told you, those are the universities that are working with us in this project, and we are supported by the program for the environment program of the United Nations. This presentation, I would like to show you the objectives of the project that we are developing. I'm going to show you also what is the current status of the motorcycle fleet in Colombia. I will show you a methodology that we developed to project the motorcycle fleet in Colombia to 2050. And finally, I'm going to show you the program that we are trying to propose to be implemented in the future in Colombia for energy efficiency. Starting with the objectives, I would like to say that we want at the beginning to evaluate what is the energy efficiency of the new motorcycle that are set in Colombia, because this project is related only to new cycle, not the old motorcycle, just the new motorcycle that are being registered in Colombia. We are going to be conducting a comparison of international experiences in the energy efficiency measures in motorcycles. Because of that, it's very important, this meeting, because we are hearing what is happening in other countries, in another sites in the world, because international experiences is gonna just fit our work in Colombia. We want to formulate an energy efficiency program for motorcycles, and doing this, we want also in those months to disseminate these activities that we are doing among the stakeholders, between the marketers, between the people that sells motorcycles in Colombia, and also the users of motorcycles in Colombia. What is the current status of the motorcycles in Colombia? In this slide, you can see how has been the distribution of the sales of motorcycles in Colombia regarding the engine displacement. Let me show you. Okay. In the XY, you can see the engine displacement. We had divided the market from 0 to 100 cubic centimeters to 2001 to 300 cubic centimeters. You can see how has been the evolution of the markets in 2019 to 2024. As you see, the most sell motorcycles in Colombia are in this range between 101 and 125 cubic centimeters. This is the most important segment of the market in Colombia, and the people who's buying motorcycles in Colombia is using the motorcycles mostly for transportation and for job or work, as you can see in this slide. This study was made for the ANDI, which is the Chamber of Industry in Colombia, and there is kind of in this chamber there is a segment that is dealing with just motorcycles. They do this study last year, I guess. Regarding the fuel efficiency and emission of CO2 of the motorcycles in Colombia, we took the data from the 80% of the most sold motorcycles in Colombia, and we classified them, as I told you in the previous slide, from the engine displacement in the XY, and you can see in the XY the fuel efficiency in this slide, in the left side, and the fuel efficiency in Colombia is being reported in two cycles, in the WMTC and the ECE cycles, and the manufacturers and the people who selling motors are allowed to show any of those reports. So here we can see that this efficiency, we show the efficiency in kilometers per gallon, and you can see how this evolved from 2019 to 2014 in both cycles. And in the right side, you can see the CO2 emission for that motorcycles, also reported in both cycles, ECE cycle and WMTC cycle. You can see here the CO2 emissions, and you can see how has been the progress through those years. Now I'm gonna show you how we are gonna project the motorcycle fleet to 2050 in Colombia. I'd like to start saying that between 2000 and 2023 in Colombia has been registered about 12 million of motorcycles. You can see that in 2000, we in Colombia were registered about 50,000 motorcycles, but in 2023 it was close to bigger than 700,000 motorcycles for the year. So the increase between 2000 and 2023 has been more than 10 times the market, the sales of motorcycles in Colombia. With this is the historical that we had. With this, we had apply a machine learning model, just taking the motorcycle sales as I showed you in the previous slide, and we are modeling this, are using this model using some exogenous variables that I'm gonna show you later, and using the motorcycle sales data and the exogenous variables, we have the prediction for the motorcycle cycle for the motorcycle sales between now and 2050. And we are going to make also the prediction of the motorcycle fleet because, you know, as some motorcycles are sales, some of them are just leaving the market, are just getting out of circulation. And once we have the motorcycle fleet, we are going to just make the prediction of the CO2 emissions. The variables, remember that I told you that we are going to be just using some exogenous variables to calculate the market. So we are using the GDP. Here are in blue is the historic GDP in Colombia in percentage, and in the yellow one is the projected according to the national government. This one is the gasoline price. We had the gasoline price in the last years in Colombia from 2000 to 2023. And this is the projected from 2023 to 2050, according to the government also. And according to the thing that this is the total population, according to the projection that we have for the next years, we see that in Colombia, the population is also increasing. And at some point in 2050, it's going to start just to equilibrate, just to slow down. So using this total population, gasoline price, GDP, we run our machine learning model to get this motorcycle sales prediction from 2024 to 2050. As you can see here, what is happening is that we had this prediction, this projected market, and we are seeing that maybe in about 2050, the market is going to start just to equilibrate, just to reach the maximum point and to get flat since 2050 and so on. And once we have this is the model just for the sales of motorcycles. We have this one, which is a model that we are trying to implement just to try to predict what is the quantity of motorcycles that are circulating in Colombia. This is a difficult one because there is no any data in Colombia that can tell us exactly how many cycles are circulating. So what we are doing is we are saying that the motorcycles can be in the market, can be circulating about 15 years. And after 15 years, we are just taking out the motorcycles from the fleet, and that's the way that we are calculating the fleet of motorcycles circulating in Colombia. Once we have done this, what we want to do, which is the next step in the project, is we are going to be calculating what are the fuel consumption of this motorcycle fleet, what are the CO2 emission of this motorcycle fleet, in order to calculate what are the benefits of implement program the energy efficiency program that we are trying to propose. So right now I'm gonna be more specific about the energy efficiency program that we are proposing. This program is the program that we are building together with the Ministry of Energy, and this is something that we are just building right now. It's something that we believe that is going to be ready maybe for the next year. So the general context about what is happening regarding these kind of strategies is that, as I told you, between 2000 and 2023 in Colombia, were sold more than, in 2000, were sold like 53,000 motorcycles. In 2023, were sold about 700,000 motorcycles, which is like 13 times more than in 2000. So this is an important increase in motorcycle sales. So because of that, we doing something regarding the fuel consumption, the CO2 emissions of these motorcycles. And Colombia, there is a microphone open. Okay, thank you. Colombia has these plans for 2050, 2030. The government is planning to have about 630,000 motorcycles in circulation. And for 2050, the expectation is that 56% of the new motorcycles will be electric. That is that the government is thinking about. To be honest, this goal of 630,000 motorcycles at 2030 is going to be so difficult to reach because the numbers right now are very, very, very low in terms of electric motorcycles.
Dr. Tiwakira, I'm sorry to interrupt you, just to let you know that you have like about 2 to 3 minutes to wrap up,
Okay.
yes?
Thank you. So this is the energy efficiency program that we are just trying to, those are the strategies that we are gonna just trying to implement, starting with the centralized information platform, following an energy labeling program, and the other part that we have here are like strategies to add to the first two. The centralized information platform, what we are thinking is we would like to have an online platform where everyone can get in this platform and just to find what are the fuel consumption and CO2 emission of motorcycles. For example, if you are going to buy a motorcycle, you can see you can compare between different brands. As you see, we have these kind of examples in Chile and the US. The economy in the US, you are able to compare vehicles. And there is one of motorcycles in Thailand. So we want to have something like this in Colombia, this plan for just to check what are the different fuel economy of the motorcycles, and you can compare them in this platform. Also, we are thinking in energy labeling program. The energy labeling program, as you know, is a sticker that you can see when you are buying a motorcycle, and there is information regarding the consumption and the energy of the motorcycles. Some countries have implemented labeling programs, as you know, Thailand and Vietnam, and this kind of labels. Colombia has some experience because in Colombia there is a labeling program for household appliances. And all the other strategies that we are trying to implement in Colombia is the electromobility promotion as an additional measure to the first ones. Incentives for purchasing more efficient motorcycles. Here are the benefits of this kind of strategies. This presentation, I'm gonna just share this presentation for you all. Motorcycle-free renovations is another measure that we can implement in this program. Energy efficient education, develop educational programs to provide information to the users. Those kind of energy efficiency programs, education has very important results in some countries where they've been adapted. And this is the program roadmap that we are thinking for this efficiency program in Colombia, starting in 2015 with the centralized platform, and maybe starting the energy labeling about in 2028. This is still in discussion with the government and with the market Colombia, but this is the initial proposal. And also there will be a monitoring and control process during the implementation of this energy efficiency program. This is a committee that has to define the parameters, establish the indicators, and define what are the responsible agencies to processing the information. and also to evaluate what is happening with the program during its implementation to take decision about that. And thank you very much. That's everything what I have to say for today. Thank you.
Thank you very, very much, Juan. I encourage everybody to put their questions to Juan in the chat. Thanks for this very interesting presentation. And now we come to a presentation of Dr. Bayona. I'm very happy that he could made it. I'm sharing my screen very quickly. So Dr. Bayona is the director of the Electric Vehicle Association of the Philippines and also a university professor. And today he will give us a short input on promoting energy efficiency in 2- and 3-wheelers in the Philippines. I would like to urge you, Dr. Bayona, due to time restrictions, to keep your presentation to under 10 minutes. If you could manage that, that would be amazing. And then afterwards we go into the questions and answering part to you and Dr. Tibakira. So I give you the floor, Dr. Bayona.
Yeah, thank you very much. I don't know if you're seeing my screen now. Are you seeing my screen?
Yes, we see your screen, but not in presentation mode yet.
Yeah, okay. Yep. Okay, so I'll be talking about promoting energy efficient 2- and 3-wheelers in the Philippines, but I'm gonna focus mostly on 3-wheelers because that's something that is quite very popular in the Philippines and really needs breathing in terms of energy efficiency. Yeah, so I'll be talking mostly about tricycles in the Philippines. So tricycles in the Philippines are used for public transport or family transport, and right now there's over 1.3 million public transport units. And you will see in there the different forms of tricycles. So they come in different forms. Normally, the daily VKT is around 40 to 100 kilometers. So that's quite intensive. That's why it plays a very critical, it plays a very important role when we're talking about NDCs and because you're looking at 1.3 million units doing 40 to 100 kilometers per day. They're mostly used for last mile in transport in cities or intra-city and municipality services for provinces. So they're used differently depending on the location. In rural areas, they mostly also serve as the main mode of transport, moving people from one city to another. But for urban areas, they mostly serve last mile. They mostly operate in local roads, except in provinces where they're also allowed in main roads. As I've said, they come in different forms. So by looking at these pictures, you see also here several issues. Like for example, they're often overloaded. Um, there are also a lot of safety issues that comes with it, how they are being used, and also it takes different forms because it depends also, for example, on the terrain. So we would see in there some of the units that are um we're in the front part are tend to be elevated, so they are mostly used in hilly areas, for example. There are areas wherein that they carry more than 10 passengers, while for some areas you only around they carry around two to four passengers. So their operations, the way they're used, they look vary a lot from each other, but they play a very important role in moving people in the Philippines. Now it has undergone various phase changes, okay, over time. It used most tricycles maybe around 20 years ago looks very much same as as what is shown in the lower left corner. But over time it has changed the face. The one on the right side, these are electrified units, and you have also there a yellow unit that's an ICA unit, but that is a symmetrically designed unit. So over time it has changed its face. Now a quick look at the history and why there was a lot of interest on improving efficiencies. So actually the efficiency component just came in when the Cleaner Act was put into law, and it brought about the consciousness of emissions from two-stroke tricycles. I think you're familiar how inefficient two strokes are, where around 20 to 30% of your fuel are actually lost and go straight to the exhaust pipe. So in 2003, there was a move to ban two-stroke tricycles. However, these tricycles are mostly operated by the poor sector. So in fact, it's one of the main source of livelihood among the poor sector. So that has become a very big national issue. That's why, although it's not really that expensive to phase them out and to replace them with four strokes, but considering the sector that's affected, it has become a very big issue. That's why during the time, my team in my previous university partnered with some universities in the US. We developed direct injection two-stroke retrofits to improve the efficiency at the same time address the hydrocarbon emissions issue. So we're able to successfully commercialize the kit. So we convert carbureted two strokes into direct injection two strokes. So we develop retrofits, we commercialize them. We were able to successfully commercialize them in around the six cities. Initially, we converted units into gasoline direct injection systems, and then eventually we also converted them into LPG direct injection system. However, over time, the number of two strokes on the ground um, diminished. So eventually, we have to close the company because there's no market already. There's no units anymore to retrofit, and most of the tricycles has now become four strokes. But during the time also we tried to run some four strokes tricycle refleeting and loan programs. So with Cleaner Asia and with other government agencies. Yep. And that set that set the test cases and demonstrated that it's actually possible to have a high collection success rates when you do loan programs. And that prompted and motivated some of the local government units to provide also loans to eventually refleet four strokes to two-stroke bicycles to four-stroke tricycles. That's why,
Dr.
as I've
Viana,
said,
I'm
at
sorry
some
to
point we
interrupt you,
don't
just
have
to
we
let you know
didn't
that
have
you have 5 minutes left. I'm sorry.
yeah. So at some point we would need we have to close the retrofitting program. And then sometime in 2013, the Department of Energy launched an e-track program through an ADB loan. So you see in there the units that were rolled out, the white ones. um, but there were some issues because they tried to lock everything into a single design. And as I've shown in the previous slide, tricycles takes a lot of work because of because of the peculiarities and how they are operated. So it was successful, not really generally adopted throughout the country. Mm. And there were also some e-track refleeting efforts in selected LGUs. As you would see in here, there's really no national program to increase efficiencies. Um, but it's mostly motivated by number one, air pollution interventions, and then eventually more on the greenhouse gas mitigation efforts. That's why we had the DOE, Department of Energy, ADB e-track program. There are a couple of issues that needs to be addressed before we really can push the electrification of the tricycle sector. In the interest of time, I won't be going through each of these things. So I have in this slide the different issues and what are the positives and what are the key actions that will be needed. But I think I just like to highlight that as it is at this point, even without yet the incentive program, it could be competitive already against the conventional unit option. Yep. But of course, there's also that issue of where does the electric the bigger the tricycles would come in terms of the hierarchy of public transport because it's too small to really compete with the jeepneys and the UV expresses. These are four bigger four-wheelers and too big to operate in where the normal tricycles operate. So that is something that needs to be addressed before we can really push for the wider adoption of electric tricycles in the country. Yeah. So there were also issues. There were also suggestions on doing retrofitting. So why not retrofit? first, there's a lack of standards. So right now, it's only Thailand that has really crafted the standards on three-wheeler retrofitting. Um, and you've seen in there two types of tricycles, one a symmetrically designed one and the one with a sidecar. Most of the tricycles right now is takes the form of the one with the sidecar, and it's just not convenient. So so it's not just an issue of powertrain, but also the issue of the whole vehicle design. And then most units are already old, so there's no point in retrofitting them. It's better just to refrag to a new unit. And there's high model variability. From our experience in before in the direct injection retrofitting, you would need to develop a or customize kits for each of the models. And considering there's so much uh, variations in terms of models that are available to the ground, then you would have to develop a lot of kits. Um, we've done some E-type adoption projections. So we're basically the government agrees that it will be mandating adoption in certain sectors, particularly in the corporate tourism and other private entities, public tricycles, and also in government. But of course, household would have to take on the voluntary route. So based on this, based on this trajectories, then we're looking at around a little less than 1.6 million electric tricycles by 2040. But of course, if you will see in there 2035, there's the sudden jump. Well, it's because there's a proposal to ban further sales of ICE tricycles by 2035. There's
Mr.
a lot
Viana,
of
I'm
ongoing
asking you.
initiatives to push for EV adoption, and this is my last slide. So you have in there also now the government is on the finalization stage of the labeling program, and there's also efforts to bring down the cost of electric tricycles and motorcycles by expanding the tariff exemption to these two types of vehicles. And then adoption mandates are now currently in discussions, and of course, we're also crafting the electric vehicle incentive strategy. So key points, tricycles and motorcycles, those small are many that they matter. Motorcycles and tricycles efficiency improvements were not drastically forced previously. Uh, and electrification effort is challenging, but it's doable. So thank you very much.
Thank you very, very much, Dr. Biona, and also thank you to Dr. Tibakira for your presentations. We have received some questions in the chat, but I would also like you I would like to invite you to raise your hands and speak up to ask your questions. And I just posted in the chat that we will not be able to end on time. We were planning to end on time right now, but because presentations are just too interesting and we don't want to cut anyone off, we will continue with the webinar for a couple of minutes more. Those of you that have to drop out, please feel free to post your questions in the chat. We will address them here, and then you can watch the recording of the event later on YouTube. I have some questions in the chat for Mr. Tibakira, and people would like to know what the share is really of 2 and 3 wheelers in the whole vehicle fleet of Colombia, and what explains the urgency of focusing on this type of transport mode in terms of reducing greenhouse gas emissions. So people are wondering a little bit what is actually the share of vehicles in the vehicle fleet, but also the share of greenhouse gas emissions that they make up. We also have a question that goes a little bit into the same direction, because Nicolas Giraldo would like to know what might explain the fluctuation in terms of motorcycle sales that you have included in your projections for the near and medium term. So I'd like to give the floor to you, Mr. Tibakira.
Thank you, Nadia. For the first question, right now, the emission of CO2 from the motorcycles in Colombia is about between 10 and 12%. But I would like to say that we are not just focusing, or Colombia, the government in Colombia is not just focusing in the motorcycles. It's also projects that are developing right now to implement policies for light-duty vehicles and heavy-duty vehicles. So we are trying to work this as a whole, taking in account of the transportation modes and the energy efficiency of this kind of vehicles, light vehicles, heavy duty vehicles, and motorcycles too. But that is a good question, and I guess we had to put everyone has to put something in this regard if you want to diminish the CO2 emissions in Colombia, and if you want to secure the fuel for the future in Colombia, we had to implement this kind of measures in all the sectors. And about the other question regarding the fluctuation that we are seeing for the following years, as you know, this is a prediction. Any prediction can have very different variation depending on the model that you are using to predict the market. In this case, we are using a machine learning model. The machine learning model, as I mentioned in the presentation, is using the GDP, the population, the gasoline price, to predict how it's going to be the market of motorcycles in Colombia. And we are using the data of the actual sales in Colombia in the last 20 years. And in that way, we are getting this model. Depends on the model that you are using, you are going to get different results. These are predictions. So the fluctuation may be related to the GDP projected for the government in Colombia, and also is like that because of the gasoline price. But if we have a different behavior in the future, maybe the market is going to be different. Just we are trying to just to forecast what is going to happen in the near future. Thank you, Nadia.
Thanks a lot, Juan. We do have another question for you, sorry, and that would be about the incentives and penalties that will be implemented for the motorcycle fleet renovation. We have this question here from Ankit Hebar. I don't know, Ankit, if you're still here and want to elaborate. Otherwise, Juan, the floor is yours.
Yes, I'm here. Thanks for the question, taking the question. So what I'm referring to is that, when you talk about a motorcycle fleet, I'm assuming that it's the stock of vehicles that people have already bought. Am I correct?
Yes, when we are talking about the incentives for purchasing more efficient motorcycles and motorcycle free renovation, we are talking about how we can make what strategies are we going to be implementing in order to push the people to change the old motorcycles.
Yeah.
So we are thinking about taxes reductions. Yeah, tell me.
The context is, for example, even in India, in Delhi, for example, the capital city, there's a lot of pollution, because of which the government wanted to phase out diesel vehicles post 10 years. Generally, when people are told that you have to, you cannot drive your car after 10 years, that's kind of jarring for them because they would have spent a lot of money to buy it. So in the same way, what kind of incentives are given or what kind of policy measures are taken to make that transition easier to help convince people? That was my question.
Well, we are thinking that maybe the one who has to give the example is the government. We are thinking that the government has to start modernizing his motorcycle fleet, because we had the policy, the police and other entities in Colombia use motorcycles. Maybe the government has to start just renovating this fleet of motorcycles, maybe for electric motorcycles or maybe for more efficient internal combustion engines motorcycles. And after that, we can also give some incentives for people who buys more efficient motorcycles or electric motorcycles. That we are thinking for this regard.
Okay, understood. Thank you.
Sure.
Thank you very, very much, Juan. I'd like to ask a question to Dr. Biona, and I would like to know what kinds of measures are being taken by the government of the Philippines to monitor the energy efficiency of the 2- and 3-wheelers that they plan to electrify.
There's a so far right now the only mechanism is through the energy labeling program. Is that actually being monitored really the underground efficiencies? But there are programs to mandate, for example, there are plans to mandate adoption of electric tricycles and electric motorcycles in certain sectors, and connecting that, for example, also to the previous question. The plan is to do an age-based phase out because to operate tricycles and motorcycles cycles as public transport in the Philippines is being you need to get a franchise, and that franchise has a maximum age. So the plan is as the existing units reach that age, then there won't be new at this point there won't be new ICE units that will be granted franchises anymore, and as the existing units gets retired later on, they would have to be replaced by electrified units. But of course, the government would have also to roll out um, preferential financing programs for those.
Thanks a lot, Dr. Biona. I see a question in the chat by Liz. Maybe Liz, can you speak up and give a bit of context about your question on the blended finance models? Are you able to unmute? Lisbia Ruanga posted a question in the chat and wants to know if blended finance models for 2- and 3-wheelers are available to the layman and to entrepreneurs in the different countries that we have heard from today. I don't know if maybe Dr. Biona, Dr. Tibakira, if Silas, if you feel able to respond to this question.
Yeah, may clarify what this blended finance program means.
I'm also not sure. That's why I asked Liz to unmute to explain to us what she refers to. But maybe we can just you can just tell us like what kind of financing schemes and maybe subsidy schemes are available, for example, in the Philippines for somebody that wants to acquire 2- and 3-wheelers. Is there any support? Are there any financial incentives?
So right on the Philippines, it varies from one local government unit to another local government unit. Some local government units will provide the subsidies, mostly cover the equity component of the loans. But getting also the private sector to fund loans has been challenging, especially for electric tricycles, because there's an issue of what do you do with the secondary market. It's still unclear. So that is a major gap. So that's why some of the local governments would have to come in and provide subsidies to increase the equities to encourage really the private sector to provide the financing program. And there are also initiatives now to tap on green climate financing to provide more affordable loans in the country. It's actually very expensive to get conventional units in the country in terms of financing. You're looking at around 30 to 35% per annum interest rates payable in 3 years. So that's an issue, but that's also an opportunity, which means then if government can roll out low cost financing at around 8% per annum, that basically balances already the price differences between electrified units and conventional units. So that's something that we're working on right now.
Thank you very much, Dr. Biona. And I see that Ankit has raised his hand. Ankit, I would give you the chance to pose the last question before we have to wrap up this event.
Thank you. Thanks a lot. Mr. Biona, I just wanted to ask a follow-up question on the financing. For example, when we are trying to give financing for electric trucks in India, the problem we are facing is financiers say they do not have enough data to figure out what is the resale value of the vehicle, what is the depreciation cost of the vehicle, what is the residual value of the battery, because of which they are not confident in giving loans. Is any such a situation also present in your home country with respect to commercial vehicles?
Yeah, in early phases, early stages, we also faced the same issue. There's an apprehension on the part of financing institutions to fund electric vehicles, especially the locally made ones, because of issues also of quality and this kind of things. But eventually, we after running some pilot programs, eventually there was a and also a lot of information education campaign. Eventually, they realized, oh, this is something that they can fund. But some of them also would require the suppliers themselves to be involved in terms of refurbishing repossessed units and this kind of things, and to come up with policies to develop secondary markets. Uh, and also, government has this another corporation called Philippine Guarantee Corporation, which could be tapped by financing institutions to guarantee loans of a green green vehicles. And there's just a small add on um, component on the interest rates. So that basically opened up the financing programs.
Oh, that's great. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you very, very much. And thank you to Ankit and to Dr. Biona for asking and responding to the last question of today's webinar. I wouldn't want to expand more than 15 minutes beyond what we had actually scheduled, but I really, really want to thank all of our presenters, Dr. Biona, Dr. Tibakira, Dr. Wang Li, and Mr. Sangha, for your very interesting presentations. Also to you, to the audience, for your interest, for your patience with us, and for asking so many questions. For those of you that would like to read more or learn more about the topic of 2 and 3 wheelers, their efficiency and electrification, I'm sharing with you here a list of additional resources that are provided by UNEP and by GIZ. You see different studies, but there's also a course available developed by TUMI on 2 and 3 wheelers, and we invite you to have a look at this. Of course, we invite you to join us for our last webinar on our webinar series on vehicle efficiency. That's going to take place next Tuesday at the same time. We will focus there on the vehicle efficiency of heavy-duty vehicles. So make sure to register. I've already put the link in the chat. I'm sure my colleagues will help me and share the link once again. And with that, really trying to beyond the time. I'm wrapping up this webinar. I think we have all learned that there is a lot going on 2 and 3 wheelers, and also on electrification in all the regions that were present here today. I think we can all benefit from more exchanges from between Asia, Africa, and Latin America on the topic, because we do see that numbers are increasing, and also governments seem to be very, very interested in the topic of promoting the efficiency of these very important vehicles. So I'm very, very happy that we could have this exchange. I think that we also saw that there is a lot of private sector involvement already, so there seems to be the technology available, but of course governments have to think about consider creating the necessary environment for these companies to strive, and for these vehicles to be sold. That of course includes also things like financing schemes, but also charging infrastructure. So let's keep the conversation going. Make sure to join us next week, and have a great rest of your day or evening. Thank you.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Bye.